St. John's.
And when Tammy seen the second time, or heard him coming down the road, Tammy jumped out through the window and went down. Never see Tammy back to school after.
But we never had a snow day. Didn't matter how stormy it got, and we used to love it because if it was stormy, the horse would come down and get us.
So religion definitely was big in the schools. You know, whether it was big right or big wrong, I don't know.
Finished grade 11, that was the end of the line then. Went to 6 weeks summer school, and came out and there were teachers.
We had a pot belly stove, and everybody had to bring a junk of wood, and if you came without the junk of wood, they sent you home.
She would stay and she would prepare us for exams, for public exams, for 4 months, which, you know, was really, when you look back at it, they were very dedicated to the community. Of course, they were from the community, so having said that, I guess they had a vested interest. And that's because I remember one of those teachers bragging about the passing rate for the public exams was 100% on her year, the year that she was there. So I think there was a great deal of commitment from the teachers in the community themselves.
And another day we were all there. I was in grade 4 that year, I think, and Tammy Luby, he was in grade 4. But anyhow, it was a real nice day, and Hubert Power was going around the cove in an old car he had. So he went down once, and Tammy seen him, or we all see him going down, and the next thing he came back around again. And when Tammy seen him the second time, or heard him coming down the road, Tammy jumped out through the window and went down. Never see Tammy back to school after. He went down with Joe. He jumped right out through the window.
But I remember one time we were out to recess, and the teachers, 3 kids were going to school here, and one was a boy, and I gave him candy. But a young fellow up on the road, I suppose he wanted to get me in trouble, he went in and told the teacher, which is the young fellow's mother, that I was after taking stuff from him. And I had to go in and try and defend myself. And anyway, I had a few words with this other young fella, and he gave me a punch and broke my glasses. So, so I went. You didn't really love it all, did you? So anyway, on the way home, I went up to his house, and I knew I'd never get the glasses repaired because the poor old souls had no money anyway. They had a big family. So I laid him on the window, and I said, "Where's your mom?" She's upstairs, and she wouldn't come down. So I left him on the window. I said, "Tell her my glasses fixed." So, but an hour after, one of the other kids came in with the glasses and laid them on the table. Mom said she's not getting them fixed for you. And then we get out of school in the evening in the winter, and the men from Whitlas Bay will come to St. Michael's to get their horse shod, you know, get on their shoes for the winter. So we'd be watching and waiting after school. Next thing the horse would come along, he'd take us on and bring us home on the horse. And my dad used to come up and meet us in the winter, because over on the hill there, every wind that blew, you couldn't see your hand in the winter. So this day was really stormy, and I remember Dad coming up and putting a coat over our heads to get us home, where we wouldn't smother.
Well, when it was really stormy, he'd come down with the horse and the sleigh, and any child that could get on the sleigh would get on it, and he'd wrap us all in a blanket. But when the horse would sink down with the snow, we'd have to get off and push the horse and the sleigh to get back up the road. But we never had a snow day. Didn't matter how stormy it got, and we used to love it because if it was stormy, the horse would come down and get us.
That was the time of the first of the televisions. So they took all the guts of the television out, you know, all the picture tube and everything. So when someone got up to sing, they were singing like just the same as they were in the television, right? So Biddy's mother used to sing these long songs, like the old Sunday dinner used to go on and on and on. And of course, all the guys down in the back of the hall, they were all the fellas were waiting for the dance to start, right? So when Mary used to get up and she was singing this song, the old Sunday dinner, out through the television, somebody in the back of the hall yelled out, "Switch over to the hockey game."
Well, I'm afraid it would be hard for me to say what the disadvantages are, because I don't think there are any disadvantages. I like to remind people when they bring something like that up, the rich and the privileged, when they choose to send their kids to private schools, the number one thing they look for is a small school. Now that tells you something, because these people can afford to send their kids anywhere. The so-called disadvantages, I suppose, is that a smaller school cannot offer as many courses. Maybe they don't have as fancy, maybe they don't have a gym at all. But all those things can be made up for. And what matters in education is not quantity, it's quality. I remember visiting a small school in southeast by Placentia. I think there were 15 kids in the school, and at recess and lunchtime, they'd be out playing sports. Every kid was on a team because every kid was needed. In a larger school, that doesn't happen. You know, some kids make the team, some kids don't. In terms of, like, some people say, what about science labs and that kind of thing? Well, in a smaller school, which will be located in a rural community, the outdoors is your science lab. You know, in terms of biology, earth science, geology, I mean, what can you not do in a community that's just out your door? The sea might be a mile away. Walk down to it, you know. So part of the problem we have, I think, or we have had, is to always be thinking of small rural schools in terms of deficits as opposed to the positives.
Maybe a rare trip to St. John's. And that was so far away that we'd probably fall asleep. I mean, with a drive to St. John's would take so long. But geography would have to be my favorite. I can remember learning about bonga in this rainforest and amazed that such a place existed. And these other people who lived on the Kyrgyz steppe. And I was saying, the Kyrgyz steppe? I mean, where are these places? It was Russia. Russia? What was that, you know? It was amazing to me. I have to say, all through school, all those grades waiting up for geography. I listened to that in grade 1. I listened to it in grade 2, grade 3, and finally in grade 4, I got my geography book. Well, I mean, I knew all of it by then, but I was so delighted to have...
When you were supposed to be learning something else.
To have the book. I could learn, and you'd get free time to read, and my goodness, I was all over the world.
I think most communities were like that to have a school, number one, was important. They all had a hope that their children would achieve an appropriate level of schooling. They may not have, depending upon the time, they may not have seen them necessarily graduating as we might have from secondary school. Yeah, so I think there was a lot of pride amongst communities in the importance of their school. And if people, interestingly enough, because the Fairland district was a more diversified economy, they weren't as, if you want to call it, as impoverished as some other places like Labrador or Northern Peninsula or the South Coast. There was more cash because people were able to earn outside the fishery.
I remember probably my first few days of school. One of the vivid memories is Dad bringing me to school, driving me in the car, and I was afraid to come in. I remember that so well. I sat in the car and all the children, I guess it was before school opened, right in the morning, and all the children were out on the playground. The playground seemed huge to me. I mean, as a child, you're so tiny. And I remember Geraldine O'Driscoll, who was a couple of years older than me at the time, probably 2 or 3 years older, getting in the car because Dad was trying to coax me to get out. Come on, you gotta go. And I was like, but I don't want to, right? And Geraldine getting in the car and saying, come on, Linda, look, Beverly is there, and seeing everybody's here, you gotta come out too. And I guess eventually that's what I did. I got out, but I remember being so scared the first couple of days of school, right? Really scared.
First morning in school, I remember myself and Brian Carew and Paddy White, I don't know if those been here.
Yeah.
And school was barely started, 10 or 15 minutes, and the teacher come down and we were talking back and forth, I guess, and she strapped me and Paddy White, I think. That was 15 minutes into the first class, and it never helped me with school for the next 11 years.
She'd give you an essay to do, and it had to be written on the slates. You had your slate, only that size. You had your chalk, and she used the chalk on the board to do whatever she was teaching you. You had your own slate. Yeah, I remember up one time doing something on the board. I had to go up with a slate, and like say I wrote little, L-I-T-T-L-E, and cross your T's after. I used to L-I-T, and I'd wait and I'd cross it, and they had a big ruler, they had a pointer. And she'd whip you on the fingers then with the ruler.
Have done research that goes back to, oh my goodness, as early as the 30s, if not before that. And it's sort of, yeah, some of the same games carry on through the generations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, and we were talking as well about Little Sally Saucer, and the same sort of idea, people sitting around in a circle, and then typically, I guess it would be a girl who would be Sally sitting in the middle of the circle, and it was Little Sally Saucer sitting in the water. So you'd be sat on the floor or on the ground, and then rise up Sally. So you would then stand up, wipe away your tears, and then turn to the east side, turn to the west side, turn to the side that you like best. And so you'd be, Sally would sort of be spun around, you know, in one direction as she was going east, and then the opposite direction as she was going west, and then sort of in, I guess, a state of a little bit of a spin, pick somebody that she liked best, and then that person then would become Sally, and then the new Sally would come into the center of the circle, and then just the rhyme would repeat.
Mm-hmm. Well, there wasn't many sleighs on the go then. There'd be on an old bonnet of a car or something like that. You'd see probably 10 youngsters on a bonnet of a car, or an old trunk cover, or whatever they could get off an old car. But then there was lots of old cars around.
London Bridge is falling down, hopscotch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tacks.
And especially the farmer in the dell, and the farmer takes his wife and all this. And, you know, you wanted to be kind of popular, and you go out and you play farmer in the dell, and then a boy would be in the middle, and he'd have to take his wife. And you were hoping that not a guy that you didn't like would take you, but when the nicer guy got in that you kind of liked, he would take you for his wife and all this.
Because there was a little rhyme that went to it, and I'm certainly not going to sing it. But it was farmer in the dell, the farmer in the dell, hi-ho the dairy-o, the farmer in the dell. And then the farmer would pick a wife. And so somebody, you know, they would choose, again, like I said, you know, probably kind of based on popularity or who your closest friend was, or if there was somebody in particular, you know, like a boy that you were interested in, or if it was a boy in the middle, a girl, vice versa. The farmer would pick a wife, and then somebody from the circle would come into the middle as well, chosen as the wife. And then the wife would pick a child, and the same thing, somebody else would join the center of the circle, being the child. The child picks a nurse. And then it goes on down through the line. The nurse, if I remember correctly, the nurse would pick a dog. The dog would pick a cat. The cat would pick a mouse, and then the mouse would pick the cheese.
At recess, we went out and you played, you know, hopscotch, and You had a big skipping rope and people were jumping in and out of that. And I remember we had one game, I'm not sure what name it was, but 2 people would hold hands and then everybody else would line up and go, and we'd say, go in and out the windows, go in and out the windows, go in and out the windows till the Irish gates are shut. Now, what that was all about, we had no clue. But anyway, whoever came between the 2 people, they got stopped. Then you were asked, which would you prefer, a gold watch or a gold ring? So if you said one, you went behind one person. If you said the other, you went behind the other person, and then you continued it on and on and on.
Well, in the winter time, there'd be lots of snow, and I mean lots of snow. So we make lots of snowballs and have snowball fights and just throw snowballs. And then the icicles will be hanging off the school there, and they'd be like 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet long, and we'd knock them down, start sucking the water out of them like an ice cube. So we used to do some sliding probably on the back of the school here, like find a piece of cardboard or find something out around and get on it and get a few slides and have fun that way, make fun. Particularly dodgeball or Red Rover. Red Rover, of course, you'd have, people would pick teams and you'd have 2 opposing lines, and everybody would be, on the opposing lines, would be holding hands. And one team, one side would start, and they would say, Red Rover, we call, and they would pick somebody from the opposing team to come over. So be Red Rover, we call Joe over, for example. And then Joe would, with all of his might and speed, muster up the speed, and then just run across and try and break through the, I guess, the barricade or the line that the opposing team had formed. And if Joe was successful in breaking through, then he got to go back to the team from which he had come. Or if he wasn't able to break through, then he joined the team that had called him over.
Whether it be Christmas time or at the end of the school year, every grade had a concert, right? And we would have it in the hall when we were down here,
yeah,
the
you
old
had the
hall,
stage,
because the stage was there. That's where the concert was. I remember one particular, I think it was in grade 2, and myself and Linda Burke. Linda's passed on, of course,
Right.
but she was a real good friend of mine going to school, and we had a little poem to say together on this concert, and we dressed alike. We had the same dresses. I don't know why, but I guess our moms got us the same dresses because we were doing the same poem. And we had I have roses on my shoulders, and we had the pink roses on our shoulders. I remember that so well. Roses on my shoulders. I have dimples in my cheek. I'm Daddy's little darling. Don't you think I'm sweet? And that's what both of us said. And that's the only thing I remember about a concert. But the 2 of us said that. And the roses on our shoulders. That was the little poem.
Can't remember that.
Yeah, that was grade 2.
And I do remember one time, sticks in my mind forever, Anne and I, and my sister, who now lives in Winnipeg, she's 2 years older than I am, we had new dresses. My dear, I mean, we thought we had it made, and I can see them now. They were kind of, the colour of the chairs, the seat on the chairs there. And they had like big sleeves, and had rhinestones or some kind of applique up here. Gee, so we thought we were the bee's knees. And we did, the song that we sang at the concert at that time was the one, Sisters, we are 2 devoted sisters. I don't know if you've ever heard it. But I mean, that was a huge thing for us. Let me see how old we would have been. I guess I was probably 9, and Anne might have been 11, I think, at the time. But yeah, they were fun.
A lot of things happened on our way to and from school. One of the things I remember is, I guess it was about 1949 when we joined Canada. So they started giving free cocoa malt. It was sort of a chocolatey powder, something like quick, and cod liver oil, and not the capsules, the actual liquid. So you had to bring a bottle or a container to school, and the teacher would fill it up with cocoa malt, fill another container with cod liver oil, and you were supposed to bring that home, and there was That was supposed to be good for you, help out your health. Now, some of the boys, I blame it on the boys, but I think it was mostly the boys who did it. They were more rascals. You'd be on your way home from school and there'd be cocoa malt. You'd think the grass was after turning brown because there was cocoa malt spread all over the place and then cod liver oil mixed in with it.
So there was another, when they'd come around to give the needles in the school, of course there was neither room to go and 15 or 20 students sitting in the class. So what you'd have to do is the nurse would call you up and, you know, you'd come up to the class. Now the teacher would say, okay, now all the rest of you, sit at your desk, put your heads down and close your eyes. Because whoever was up in the front of the class had your uniform hiked up and your underwear half down. So of course everybody was peeping up under, you know, because they didn't want anybody to be embarrassed, I suppose. But what could you do? You were leaning over a chair and they were giving you a needle.
They were chosen by the priest. Now, any more than that, I really couldn't tell you, because back then we had no idea. I know that most teachers didn't have a lot of formal training as teachers, because years later I went on to be a teacher myself. And even then, if you had 1 year university, you were considered super qualified. A lot of teachers finished grade 11, that was the end of the line then, went to 6 weeks summer school, and came out and they were teachers.
And I remember, just as if it were yesterday, when they mentioned about the new teacher that was coming to town, had arrived, and she was down with Maggie Luby and Tommy down there. And she was going to be teaching me the next day, and she was from Bell Island. She recalls that she was being paid. She was only 17. I just turned 17 actually in May, and she came in here in September. And she recalls being paid $93 a month, and then they would get a $40, I guess, some sort of a pay for going to
for isolation.
Isolation pay, I would think it is.
I imagine. What?
You know, which was very interesting. And of course, she'd leave here after school in the evening, and she'd go down here to Tommy and Maggie Luby's, and go upstairs and stay in the bedroom all night because she couldn't understand what Tommy and Maggie were saying.
Yeah.
And I remember after school, children, the grade 9 children had to do public exams. Now, teachers never knew what would be on the public exams or what questions you would get or anything. So knowing that you didn't have that extra time to spend with the children, I would come back every evening after school. I would let the other kids go at 3 o'clock. Then I'd run home and have a little lunch and come back from 3:30 to 5 o'clock with the grade 9s every day. And I think a lot of the teachers did that too, that were in these 2-room schools. That's what she did. To help them, to give them more time with math and language and stuff like that. History and that didn't make so much difference because you had time that you could do sort of that with them. But to give them extra time that they might need in areas that you didn't have time to do during the day with them, you know. And I saw a lot of teachers doing that.
Well, I'm a strong advocate of small rural schools, and I'm a strong advocate of community-based schooling. So if that's going to happen in Newfoundland, the schools are going to have to be small. Now, we have schools with as few as 50 students in them, even 20 students, and I think they are quite viable schools. I think the number one advantage of smaller schools is intimacy. People know each other. The teacher knows all the students. They know their families. families. The students get to know the teachers. And most small schools will also be multi-graded or multi-age, which means that the student and teacher will be together for 2, 3, or 4 years consecutively. That allows student and teacher to get to know each other, to get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and really work with them, but also get to know the families. So these small schools would be community schools. They would be located in the community. The kids would walk to school, and I think that's an enormous advantage as well. Unfortunately, in Newfoundland, starting in 1965, we started to turn our backs on small rural community schools and bus kids to larger schools. And I think that was a terrible mistake, because I don't think the purported advantages of larger schools make up for the loss of community-based schools.
Joan Delaney was
She was
here
so
when
sweet.
I first started.
Did you?
And I just felt that, here was a person who cared about, what I was doing, that type of a feeling.
Yeah. Elvis Melvin?
No, Joan Delaney.
Oh, Joan.
Joan Delaney.
She was excellent.
She was, she really was. Yeah, she made my start in school it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
The way I felt like, she wanted me to learn more and more and more. I was encouraged a lot.
I remember lots of times that, I guess Anna Roney, I remember one of the last teachers I had in grade 9, I guess we weren't the best students in the world. But I remember those teachers, and Helen O'Ryan in particular too, these particular teachers, their working day was probably from 8:15, 8:30 in the morning, it was probably 5:30 in the evening. They stayed, like when the public exams would start, like in June, we would spend all of March, April, May, and June, 5:30 every evening. She kept the class to be over for 4, so I think it was 4 o'clock then, or 3:30. She would stay and she would prepare us for exams, for public exams, for 4 months, which, was really, when you look back at it, they were very dedicated to the community. Of course, they were from the community, so having said that, I guess they had an invested interest. And that's because I remember one of those teachers bragging about the passing rate for the public exams was 100% on her year, the year that she was there. So I think there was a great deal of commitment from the teachers in the community themselves.
Say if you didn't have your homework done or something like that, they'd keep you in, probably be here for 2 hours in the evening after. And one evening I was here, and myself, there was 3 or 4 of us kept back in, Kevin Lonergan was one. And next thing there was a big knock came on the door. Here was his mother. Came down to see if I was on the go, and she came in and she told him, "Come on, Kevin," she said. "That's enough of this old bull," she said. And Kevin got up and went down. I was the only fella left her, and the teacher told me, she said, "You can go on now," she said. I suppose she was afraid someone would come look at me, and I'd be her a while.
We had a sister here from Mansefu one year. And I guess they used to come around to the schools back then and bring the pictures of all the little kids, And I remember she asked a question to the class, and one of the students probably saying, they said, I knows. So she said, "Come here." And he came up, and I don't remember who it was, but she said, "Come here." And she said, "Now you point to your face where I'm pointing to mine." And she had her finger up like this, and she said, "Now what's that?" He said, "My nose." She said, "Well, that's the only nose that's in the dictionary."
Her table was in front of the class right here, and she would have 18 different ornaments on it. She would move that, and move this, and move this. She would talk in the morning. Every morning, 15 minutes, she talked about her family and morals and what we're learning in school. And we would shift, she would shift everything. So what we would do, we would shift it all back. When she'd go to lunchtime, she'd go home lunchtime, we'd shift everything back in a different order again. Because obviously she was obsessive compulsive, we didn't know what it was then. She would take everything and put it right back in the same order that she had before, and we would switch it again. And I bet you we did that for a solid year, and she never caught on to what we were doing.
I remember too, when it come to the month of May and June, the sister who taught grade 11, Mother Anthony, instead of letting us go at 4 o'clock, she would stay and give us extra help. And the boys didn't like that, of course, but up in front by her desk was there, and then she had this press there, and she had books in that and things. And she had this clock there, an old-fashioned clock that there was, you had to wind it up every week, and there was a little door on it. And when when 4 o'clock had come, they'd all be gone except the grade 9s, the boys. If she was with the grade 10s, the boys in grade 11 would go over, open the door and put it on 10 minutes, move the hand on 10 minutes, and then someone else, put it on 15, number 15, And then when the clock would strike 1 o'clock, strike 1, 2 o'clock, strike 2. And when it strike 5, she had to get up and run because I think the sisters went to prayer at that time. So she got up and run, see? And she said, "Oh, it's okay, pack your books now and go on home, So that had gone on for a while. But after a while, she found out what was happening. So because she'd go in the evening, if it had been for 5 o'clock. And so then she came out this morning. And she looked up at the clock, and the clock was the right time, see? Because when she began, they put back the clock to what it was supposed to be. So anyway, she came out this day, and she said, "Ma, that's funny about that clock, isn't it? It gains some evenings it gains 20, and the other evening it gained 25 minutes. Now, it gained 25 minutes because the boys were anxious to get out because they were going trouting, as they used to say. So anyway, the next day, when the clock struck 5, everyone was getting ready to go. "Oh no," she said, "don't go now." She said, "that clock is wrong in the evening." She said, and she took out a clock, she had a clock in her drawer, and she opened the drawer, and she said, "This is the right one," she said, So she, she had the boys that, and she said, "I'm not going to ask who put the clock ahead, I think I know," she said.
I remember one day it was really stormy, and of course Dad picked me up from school, and he had a really hard time getting up the road there because it was so slippery. And I remember he gave Doris Coultas, the teacher, a ride up to Philomena's, and I thought, "Oh my God, the teacher's in the car with us!" It was like that was big, right? That was huge because as a child you thought teachers were like, you were afraid, right? Anyway, Dad offered her a ride up to Philomena's, I remember. And I remember Dad putting down the window in the car because he couldn't see. It was really a blizzard. And he had a hat on his head, and the hat blew out the window. And he dropping her off at Philomena's, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, she's gone. She's finally out of the car," kind of thing, because you wouldn't speak, right? You were afraid.
Don't let them tear that little building down, for there's not another like it on the whole southern shore.
Well done, Anna.
It's so good to bring together music and friends.
This morning I came down, I got it going, but I was a little bit late and the wood was wet. I couldn't get it going, but how cold were in school that day? Well, I said, "I'll fool you the next time." So I came down early, about 7:45 in the morning, or 7:30. Had me a bundle of splits and 2 or 3 jugs. And I brought 2 long rubbers with me. When I got the splits going nice, I threw in a long rubber. That got going just dandy. Started to get warm.
Who was going without boots that day, I wonder?
And by when the teacher came, Rita Keefe, God, I love her.
Oh, yeah, right.
And she came up. The legs of the stove and everything were red hot.
Oh, my sake.
Nearly burnt the place down.
Oh.
And of course I got a slapping for that.
Oh, well, naturally.
Well, at least they were warm.
At least they were warm.
Yes, that day anyway. So were my hands.
Things were so different, and you the wood and the coal and bringing wood to the school. I remember bringing wood to school. The interesting thing, I remember coal. Was a big burning. That's how you heated most of the schools. There's 2 pot-belly stoves in this building, one here, one in the other one. And at the fall of the year, when the priest got enough money or the school had enough money, they bought coal from St. John's. And the truck would come in, all the boys, myself and 3 or 4 particular guys, the Drone, Power and those guys, we were the guys who got the job, the honourable task of shoveling the coal into the coal pound. The coal pound was only about 6 feet high, so when you were in there, you had the block of ring at the back of it. And we used to start on one day, so we had 4 guys who should probably finish the job in 3 or 4 hours. It usually lasted 5, 6 days. And we shovel it in, we shovel it back out again, trying to keep trying to, any way at all, where we wouldn't have to come into the classroom, right? And when you come in then, 12 o'clock, you come in, you have dust and coal all on your face, and the teacher send you home, you get washed up and come back in the afternoon, so. But we were very manipulative when it came to heating and stove. So in probably March or April, when you put the wood in, you put in probably a half shovelful of coal and a junk of wood, and that probably do you for probably an hour and a half. Of course, the rebels in the classrooms, and which there was many, we would put in 4 shovels of coal and 3 or 4 junks of wood, and what would happen, the stove would heat right from the bottom of the stove right to the chimney and top. And the teacher would have no choice but say, listen, we got to take a break for 10 minutes and go outside, put on your coats, go out, open the windows and open the door to cool it down again. So
the boys were responsible for the wood stove. So we all had to bring our junk of wood, but boys would be assigned in turn to come and light the fire. And some of them were little imps, as you probably remember. So say if they wanted to get off school, they'd probably block up the chimney or block the stove solid so that she turned red, and the teacher had to turn everybody out in the yard, or either that they'd have the chimney blocked and the smoke would come back and you'd have to get out.
We used to redden it up as much as we could, and you know, you were kind of leery about it. But one morning, this was I think I was only in grade 1, and I vaguely remember this, but we came from mass one morning and the place was full of smoke, and they had all the windows open, all the doors open, and we were out in the yard for perhaps an hour. I don't know, it seemed like a long time. It was cold anyway, it was in the winter. And apparently, I think it was Tommy or Drome, I'm not sure, Tommy or Drome anyway, one of them had cut up an old car tire and brought it down and put it in to try, I don't know if he was trying to beat the record or...
We had a pot-belly stove, and everybody had to bring a junk of wood, and if you came without the junk of wood, they sent you home to get it. And we had no indoor plumbing. You had to go out to a little outhouse on the river there to go to the bathroom, and sometimes you weren't even allowed to do that. Asked to go up to the, you had to stand up and put up your hand. Do you remember that? And
yes, I do.
Miss, may I leave the room? Down, down, she'd say.
Father Cody came up this morning, and it was in the spring, I guess, maybe around this time, before school closed, and he had the septic tank dug up because they were going, it was filled up and they wanted to get a drain, and he went out looking down if he didn't fall into the bloody thing. What a mess he was in.
Religion was big. Religion was big. The May altars, the June altars, the catechism. I mean, God almighty, I'm sure I got a little catechism here with me today belonging to my brother. I have mine home too. But I'm sure I could recite some of the questions and everything, who made us, and I'll tell you one thing, I was hung up on the difference in venial and mortal sin. So I thought everything I did was a mortal sin. I was going to go straight to hell, okay, if anything happened to me. So religion definitely was big in the schools. You know, whether it was big right or big wrong, I don't know. I mean, we made our first communion. That was great. We survived Father Cody. You know, we did a lot of church.
But it wasn't like it is today. We didn't make our communion and confirmation at the same time. We did our first communion when we were, I suppose we were 7. Or, yeah, and confirmation it was a couple of years later. But that was a big deal, of course. You all had to have your white dress and your flowers and all that stuff. And going to confession, again, was Father Cody, you know, and he knew everyone, naturally, in the parish. And you'd go in, you'd say, bless my father, I've sinned. And who are you? He'd say. And I'd say, oh, I'm Biddy, Father. Oh, you're Biddy's father. He'd say. He knew my mom well, and it was the kind of perfume Mom used to wear. I can see it now. It was in a blue box. It was called OD cologne. And every time Mom would go into the confessional, he'd say, "That you, Mary? I can smell your OD cologne." That's the kind of stuff you'd get on with, you know. And penance, then he might give you 10 Hail Marys. Go on, he'd say, you know.
Priests were in charge of hiring and firing teachers. And the priest was the main one. There was no school board at that time when we were going to school back then. But the priest would come regularly to make sure that we knew our prayers. We had to, and a lot of we knew our prayers from home, but they had to be done in school all the time. When it came to Lent time or before Christmas time, you got ready for a pageant in the church, or you did your first Holy Communion. Like all the sacraments you were prepared for within the school.
I'm pretty sure it was confirmation. And of course, what they would do at the time was they take the kids from up in St. Michael's and Burncove and all that area and bring them down, and of course they'd have to confirm us all together. But I was standing next to Leonard T. The late Leonard T, I should say. Leonard just passed away, and a great person. And I was next to Leonard, and I remember, and I'm not really sure if it was Father Cody or the bishop came down, and he stopped, and of course I was, oh gee, I just hope he doesn't ask me something now about religion. Or anyway, he bypassed me and he went to Leonard and he said, young man, who made you? And Leonard looked at him and he said, Father, the Holy Ghost.
I thought I got a pretty good education, as well as anybody else would get in any other school. And sometimes we had a lot of, a lot of attention from your teacher, especially if you were in the higher grade. I remember being in a higher grade, and Agnes and I were the only two there. And the teacher would come down and sit in the desk, and we'd sit on each side of her, and she would tell us things and do math with us and show us all that. So I think we did very well, especially in the higher grades. And to move on to, then I went to Whittle Spain, did commercial course. And I ended up in government, and I worked in government for years. So I think my education was as good as anybody else might get.
Education, the litmus test then was what was referred to, I think the name has changed now, with CHE exams, which is Canadian High School Equivalency. And that was a real big deal because that started in grade 9. And so that was a way to validate, I guess, or compare the performance of kids and so on. And the teachers. I don't know that it was always a talk about how people did in the CHEs, because it was a more demanding and I guess a more objective testing.
So it was provincial exams?
It was Canadian, it was national.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the grade 9s had to write these exams. So it was always a big deal. So, but I think generally speaking, the performance was pretty good. So the education system wasn't all that bad.
A small school, 1- 2-room schools. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. And I asked them, because some went on to university, not all. I said, did you feel that you weren't properly prepared for the university? And invariably they said things like, no, we were very prepared. And the number one preparation we had, we learned to work independently. Because in a small school with multi-grade classrooms, the teacher is not teaching in the traditional sense like they are in a larger school. Students have to take responsibility for their own work, they have to work independently, and they have to help each other. So the kids from rural schools, they graduate with this sense of independence, self-reliance, and cooperation. They work with each other. So, I mean, what better qualities would you want to be producing today, in terms of preparing kids for adulthood or for post-secondary education? The number one thing I think is taking responsibility for yourself, and that's what rural kids did.
In my home, school was the thing, and I hope it's okay if I give a tribute right here to my parents. Neither of them had much education. My father used to tell me he got as far as Tom's dog. I don't know what that was, but I think in today's equivalency, they might have had about grade 6, both of them. They could read and write, not a whole lot more than that. But from the time I was able to understand, it was drilled into me and then into my brother when he came along. You're getting your grade 11. Now, back in the 1940s and 50s, grade 11 was something special. They didn't know anything about university in those days. But we were told we were getting our grade 11 because Mum and Dad didn't have the education themselves, but they valued it and they wanted us to have it. They wanted us to have a better chance at life and at a job than they had themselves.
We needed to have a good education so that we could all have good jobs when we were finished. And I think their whole aim in life was to make your position when you got older to be better than what theirs was.
Yeah.
They didn't have the opportunity. They were all young when they were taken out of school to have to go to work. And I think our parents put that sense of staying in school and getting a good education in all of us. I know we all had it in us.
But I am aware that I think that wherever, whatever environments we find ourselves in, at whatever point in history, that you know, we can make the most of it as we choose. So to be independent in a classroom of 35 students with, you know, a gymnasium, et cetera, you know, is not unheard of either. You know, the intimacy is certainly a function, I think, of smaller environments. And, you know, the ability to learn how to care for one another so that, you know, you're attending to maybe some of the young ones while you're the middle school child. You know, so that kind of leadership ability, developing leadership, is strong in a more intimate environment.
We still had the potbelly stove, yeah. And I would tell the ones out to work, and they wouldn't believe me. Because I worked for 25 years with the city, and I'd be telling them the stories, because they'd ask me stories about, you know, how did you grow up in a small place? And I told them, you know, I said, a two-room school, you know, we had no running water, we had no toilet, we had nothing like that. And they couldn't believe it. They said, there's nowhere here, you know, on the island that really people went through that. Even people from around different parts of the bay didn't have it. I said, well, we did. The schoolhouse is still there. And what I said to them was, you know, they said, you're from a, you know, real hick town, you're real hillbillies and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, listen now, you're sitting next to me here. I'm doing the same job you're doing. I'm making the same money you're making. So I guess I must have come out of it pretty well, even though I didn't have all the amenities that you guys had. But we had good times. I mean, we had good times in school. We didn't have much, you know, we didn't, like I said, we did the extracurricular activities we had was playing hopscotch, playing marbles, playing, I don't know, hide and seek around the school. We skipped rope. We did all of that, and we had fun.
I remember the first day, Margaret Dempsey. She was a teacher then, and I can remember that I was playing the same thing. I was pretty young, and we used to go into the school there on the far end, and she said, you should still be home. Your mother will be babysitting you. You know, there's a lot of memories in this old school.
And darkness and on me. sea you serve, but moan in mastery, rage and cry, and stir the depths of me. Set me free, let me see, let me be the sea. Oh, the sea, my very soul's the sea. Tides and swells are but a part of me. Quietly, hauntingly, mystically moves the Down the hills I went one morn, a lovely maid I spied. Down the hills I went one morn, she looked at me and smiled. Her eyes did shine like diamonds bright, and sparkle like the dew. She smiled and said, "You're the boy I'll wed. I'm to meet you in the foggy dew." Droop your head, your rose of red, as the weeping willows deep. You should droop your head in shame before a maid so sweet. And I says, "Pretty girl, won't you be my bride beneath the skies of blue?" She smiled and said, "You're the boy I'll wed. I'm to meet you in the foggy dew." a-singing I did go. Down the hills I went at morn, and she answered soft and low. She says, if you'll be mine own true love, I'm sure that you'll prove true. And close in my arms I will find your charms, will be hidden in the foggy dew.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more